Going into the 2010 MLB draft, Bryce Harper was seen as kind of like one of the best ever prospects in MLB history, or baseball history, I mean. It's kind of like how Andrew Luck was seen as the best football recruit ever, or one of the best. Same with Sidney Crosby in hockey and LeBron James with basketball. Bryce Harper was that guy for the MLB. And in the minors, he proved it. In 2011, he was ranked #1 in many sources. In 2012, he was ranked #1 and #2 because of Mike Trout. But he was seen as like one of the best prospects at that time. And he was so good, he even got called up at 19 years old. It ended up winning the Rookie of the Year. I'll show you his stats over, but he won the Rookie of the Year. He was impressive for his age, especially. And, you know, the next 2 years, he wasn't really as good. I'll show you the stats as well. But, you know, he wasn't as good. Like, the year after, he kind of had a similar year. And the year after that, he kind of battled injuries and wasn't that great while on the field. And then 2015 came, he had one of the best seasons in recent memory. He hit over 40 homers, had, I think, real close to 100 RBIs, had a .330 batting average, OPS in the 1100s. Like, that's amazing. That's like a generational year. They couldn't make the playoffs that year. He was just amazing. And it was really fun to see. And then 2016, he really struggled as well. Then 2017, he came back, even though he was injured. Still had a very impressive year. I believe his OPS was over 1,000. He did very well that year. And then 2018, during his contract year, he went from very disappointing to pretty good, and then had an average year. Yeah, I believe he batted just under .250, hit over 30 homers, but not the type of guy that you'd see like as the face of the franchise. And despite this, and he had past success as well, he ended up signing a 13-year, $330 million contract with the Phillies. And his first year in 2019, he was basically like his 2018, like very similar numbers. I'll compare them as well. He was very similar during that time. And in 2020, he got off to a very good start, but obviously it was only 60 games because of COVID. But still, I mean, he was very impressive during that time. But the point that I'm showing you his past success is that this is kind of like the topic of the video. He's very inconsistent. Like, one year he'll have this like amazing year. The next year he'll be very disappointing. Then the next year he'll do well, and so on and so forth. And the Nationals even won a World Series after he signed with the Phillies. Like, the Nationals won the World Series in 2019 without, at the time, their franchise guy, because they were able to use that money for like Patrick Corbin. And he ended up really bolstering that rotation, and he ended up doing really well for the Nationals that year and really helped them win the World Series. And in baseball, you need a good rotation. I guess the Nationals saw that. They even re-signed Steven Strasburg after the 2019 season. Now, a lot of people saw this as a bad contract, and I mean, it's very risky. You know, like I said, he's inconsistent. But as I mentioned before, he's one of the best prospects and one of the most like MLB-ready players that ever happened, and the Nationals really lucked out into being able to draft him. But some of the years he had were very disappointing. You wouldn't have really thought. A couple of the years you thought, man, he's like amazing. But a couple of years you wouldn't. And in this video, I'm going to explain like why he might be a little bit inconsistent, and like what he can do maybe to help him gain a little bit more consistency, because obviously he has the talent, the tools, and the skill to be able to do so. And I think he's the most talented player in baseball with Mike Trout, but his stats don't show him and don't make him one of the best players in baseball. So now let's go to my like first kind of theory. Like, you could see a lot of the times with like fans or other players on the other teams, he gets frustrated and he gets angry. And this really translates to how he plays, you know. It's one way to play angry, you know, like sometimes whenever you play angry, you can still feel confident in yourself trying to prove someone wrong, and you end up playing well angry. Like, a lot of players can play well angry. Like, look at Josh Donaldson too, he's like angry all the time. But it's a difference when you play frustrated. If you play frustrated, you get a lot of things to go in your head. You don't really feel as confident as you would be if you were angry. And once you start getting stuff into your head, it's going to be very hard to see the ball and to see it on a straight line, because sometimes whenever you're in a slump, the ball will look like it's going up and down like this, and it won't look like it's going in a straight line like how it should. And a lot of that has to do with like mentally, and he just gets frustrated. And the frustration he gets, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just, I don't know, the type of day he has or whatever. But when he gets frustrated, it seems like he strikes out a lot. And his strikeout rates aren't as high as like the average like MLB player like nowadays. But, you know, he gets frustrated a lot. But like on the bright side, he always walks a lot. He gets on base a lot. That's something I preach a lot about Bryce Harper is willing to get on base. He's aggressive, but he's not overly aggressive where he's going to chase a bad pitch all the time. He's patient enough where he can be very valuable to the team, even whenever he has a lower batting average. His OPS shows. I mean, he has OPSs almost 900 while even batting in the 240s. A lot of that has to do with his home runs, but when he's on base almost 40% of the time only batting in the 240s, that's just as valuable as just getting a base hit. Like, that's one of the things I preach. But still, I mean, he gets the anger, or not the anger, but the frustration, and it lets him go to his head, and he ends up whiffing on a lot. And the second reason I feel that Bryce Harper has gained some inconsistencies is how he sees the ball. Now, I know I'm not this like coach, I'll like, even though I play baseball, I'll never be even like a 15th of how good he is. But this is just something I noticed when looking at the replay. So whenever he's swinging the ball, like I'll show you a slow motion replay like on the side of the screen. When he's hitting the ball's coming at him, he looks at the spot where he believes the ball is, and then he swings. So he's already guessing where the baseball is going to be before it even gets to the spot where he's going to hit. I mean, you still should, like a lot of players guess, but whenever you're anticipating the ball to be somewhere as fast as he does, it can get some inconsistencies. And even though he could still, he's still going to be able to drive the ball because of his potential. But that's one of the things where if he doesn't drive the ball, he's going to miss it because of how he's seeing the ball. And now I'm going to go on the side with Christian Yelich. I'll compare him because he's something I always... Yelich is someone I always preach of how he hits the ball. And it shows, like, he was so successful for the Brewers. I believe he just started doing this with the Brewers. And even though he struggled in 2020 a little bit, it was only 60 games, he was heating up at the end of the year, so I'm going to give him a little bit of slack. So whenever Christian Yelich hits the ball, like on a slow motion, his eyes don't go to the barrel of the bat until the bat is connected with the baseball. And that gives him the best results. And once he sees that ball, and he's looking at it exactly where he needs to see it, like right where the bat is making contact with the ball, he gets the best results. And it gets him that consistency that Bryce Harper lacks. That's why he's like a 330, 340 hitter consistently now with the Brewers. And it's also one of the reasons why Bryce Harper isn't always as consistent. He still puts up great numbers, like great numbers like for OPS and for on-base percentage. But some of like the at-bat or the batting average, and he could still hit more home runs, and a lot of that has to do with the inconsistency on his approach. Like, Bryce Harper should never change anything about his swing. If you're in the MLB, you shouldn't really change your swing unless it's absolutely necessary, because the swing got you there. It's just a few adjustments, sometimes mental, sometimes where you stand, maybe you have to back up in the box, maybe you should change your approach, I don't know. But your swing should not have much to do with it, especially if you're in the MLB. You're one of the best players in the country. So that's also something to consider. And I know this isn't a lot, but those are the two things I saw when evaluating Bryce Harper. Because he's always been like an interesting case because, he's someone I look at and he's so good, but he could be better. Like, he could be one of the best players in the MLB. And he's not. And it's kind of sad. Even though he's like the most for sure thing MLB almost pretty much has ever had, he hasn't really been able to show the consistency where he can always be like one of the best players in the MLB. Like someone like Mike Trout, he's always one of the best players in the MLB since he was a rookie. And Bryce Harper sometimes gets up there, sometimes he doesn't. And, those are the two things I really feel that kind of drove his consistency to not have any, to be able to have some of these years whenever he's batting in the 240s or 260s or something like that. But he's still young. I believe he's a Hall of Famer just because of how his career will end up because of how young he is. But, he could be one of the best of all time. And, if he just makes a couple adjustments, I think he'll be set. So thanks for watching, and I'm not an expert, but that's just the things I evaluated myself, and I think they're pretty reasonable. And yeah, I'll see you guys on Sunday. So see you guys then.